All right, 11.4 is about tree diagrams and then answering questions about them. It's also about sample space, but I'm not going to make you list the sample space. So when you go through the problems, if it asks you to list the sample space, you do not need to do that. I'll show you what it is. If it's helpful to you, you definitely can, but you do not have to. Okay, you won't have to on the quiz or the test. So what this is when you do more than one thing. For instance, if you have let's say you're going to roll a die 3 times. You want to know all the different possible outcomes. So like 1, 2, 3 is an outcome, 1, 3, 2 is an outcome, so on and so forth. All right, so that's what this will do, is show you what the possible outcomes are when you do that. So we're going to just dive right in. Page 667. We're going to do 11 and 12. It's asking you the same questions, but 2 different types of problems. So what there are 3 cards. We have a sunshine, so I'm going to call that S, and then we have a question mark, so I'm going to call that Q, and then we're going to have an apple, so I'm going to call that A. All right, so it says we're going to draw for number 11. We're going to draw 2 cards with replacement. So what that means is we draw 1 card, write down what it is, put it back, and then draw another card. So we could get the same card twice. All right, so here's what the tree diagram looks like. We're going to draw them going down. So we have a sun, we have a question mark, and we have an apple. Our first card can be one of those 3 things. So this column represents your first card. Your second column represents your second column, or your second card. So we could get, since it's with replacement, we could get those 3 cards all, again, S, Q, and A. S, Q, A, S, Q, A. So the reason we call it a tree is because they make branches. Okay, what the sample space would be is if you want to write the sample space, I probably shouldn't do that since that's one of the options. Sample space is when you actually list them out. So you have S, 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 Q, S, A, Q, S, Q, 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 A, F, A, Q, A, A. Okay, so again, you can do that if it's helpful, but you do not have to. All right. Part A wants to know how many possible outcomes there are. So there's 2 ways to do this. The easy way, what I consider, is you can do something called the counting principle. And here's what it means. How many options do you have for your first card? 3 of them. You can get a sun, a question mark, or an apple. Times how many can you get for your second card? 3 of them, since it's with replacement. So there are 9 possible outcomes. The other thing you can do is you can just go over here and count 3, 6, 9. All right, so whether you want to draw your tree diagram first or do the number of possible outcomes first, either way you should get 9 possible outcomes. All right, part B wanted the tree diagram plus the sample space, but again, you do not have to do the sample space. Part C, now we're going to actually answer the questions. Wants the probability of 2 apples. So I'm just going to put 2 A's. So if you look, obviously none of these work because those first card is a sun or a question mark. So apple, apple. There are 1 out of 9. That's it. Part D wants the probability that you would get a sun, then a question mark in that order. Okay, it says sun, then question mark. It doesn't say sun and question mark. Then we would be looking at any order. But this needs a sun first, so you know you're going to go here, and then a question mark. There's only 1 out of 9. Part E wants the probability of at least 1 apple. So this you basically just have to count. Here's 1. Here's 2. Here's where it gets a little tricky. 3, 4, 5. 5 out of the 9 have at least 1 apple. This one has 2, but that's fine because it says at least 1. All right, so that's why some people like to write out the sample space just because they want to count them that way. But if you're able to count them from the tree diagram, that's great. Okay, now number 12, I'm going to draw under here, wants 2 cards without replacement. So I'm going to go up here. This is going to be number 12 on this side. So part A, instead of doing 3 times 3, you're going to do 3 times 2 and get 6. You still have 3 options for your first card, but only 2 options for your second card because you don't put that first card back. Okay? Part B then, for the tree diagram, here's what the tree diagram would look like. We still have S, Q, and A for our first options, but now we only have Q and A right there, S and A right there, and S and Q, doesn't matter the order, but I'll try to keep it in the same order. Right there. So now we only have 2, 4, 6 options. Okay, so for part B, the probability of 2 apples. You can't get 2 apples, so that answer is 0. It's impossible to get 2 apples because you don't put the apple card back when you draw it the first time. Part D, probability of a sun, then a question mark. Sun, question mark. 1 out of 6 this time instead of 9. Part E, at least 1 apple. 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 6, which is 2 out of 3. You have to simplify. All of your answers need to be simplified fractions. All right, so being able to draw the tree diagram, you will have to draw the tree diagram for a quiz and the test. You do not have to write out the sample space, but you can. But you will have to draw the tree diagram and then answer questions about it. All right, so if you want to practice that, you're going to look at page 669, numbers 19 and 21. So those answers will all be in the back of the book.